Welcome and thank you for listening to the Civic Space today with Southern Defenders. In this podcast, we explore the status of the civic and political space in the Southern Africa region. We unpack critical issues that shape the space. My name is Mantate Mlotshwa and I am your host. Today, we delve into the complex and evolving landscape of artificial intelligence, AI, and its implications for human rights in Southern Africa. I'm joined by Nompilo Simanje, a lawyer and an expert on the intersection of technology, law, and human rights. Nompilo currently works as the Africa Advocacy and Partnerships Leads at the International Press Institute, and she has extensive experience in promoting access to information, media freedom, freedom of expression, and the right to privacy. Nompilo, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Mantate. Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be part of the conversation.
It's our pleasure, really. So normally when we start the conversation, to just give people a sense of yourself beyond the way that I would have described you, is to ask our guests to just tell us who you are in your own words.
That's quite difficult. I think even with interviews, when you're asked, like, tell us about yourself, it's something that I struggle with. But I think naturally, just like everyone else, I identify quite a lot with my work. And I mean, I'm very passionate about media freedom and free expression, access to information, the right to privacy, both online and offline. And I think over the years, I've had this inclination towards particularly the online side of things, seeing how we are in the digital age. So I think that's like who I am, really, just passionate about fundamental rights online. And also, I mean, beyond that, of course, I am a new wife, young wife. So I'm also someone who have been trying to navigate the complexities of being a career woman and also managing my home and my family. And yeah, I love traveling. I love cooking. So that's who I am, really, beyond my work as well. Yeah.
We love that. We love us an all-round defender. So I wanted us to start maybe by looking at how we can potentially explain artificial intelligence to everyday people, as well as human rights defenders. How do we define it in ways that they're able to understand and how it interacts with their everyday life?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it's quite interesting actually thinking about this because, like, I had a recent conversation in Accra, I think sometime in May thereabouts, and we're talking to journalists about AI policy and regulation in Africa, and some of them were actually not cognizant of the different ways in which they are using AI. You know, despite that we are using it quite a lot, like on a day-to-day basis. So when I think about AI, really, and I want to explain it to anyone, I'll just say these are technological tools that allow us to do what would naturally be difficult tasks or time-consuming tasks quite easily and quite faster. But also, these are tools that, to some extent, help us also to, bridge the divides and tap into some of the aspects that naturally would expect more time and more human resource. So, for example, if I'm thinking about AI from the perspective of media freedom, you can think about social media analysis, you can think about data analysis that can involve like heavy, extensive time in monitoring social media, picking the trends, picking the patterns. But when you use AI, when you use these technological tools, you are able to have the data analyzed and the trends mapped out for you quite easily and quite faster. So AI really is just about these technological tools that we are now using in our day-to-day to enable us to do work quite easily and quite faster.
Thank you so much for that breakdown. I think it's very important to just highlight that artificial intelligence is not necessarily new, because I think a lot of people just looked at, its recent surge and thought like, oh, this is the new. A lot of it has over the years been developing, but it has gained a lot of prominence now. How have governments in Southern Africa responded to the rise of AI?
So actually, I think this is quite interesting because I think for starters, our governments have really been lagging behind in terms of keeping up with technology. And I think it was only at the peak of COVID-19 that we started to see our governments really working up to the reality of technology and how we can embrace it, how we can regulate it, how we can ensure that it becomes part of our, day-to-day societies and activities. And so I think with particularly with COVID-19, we started seeing AI being introduced in different aspects, but particularly I think within Southern Africa, one of the issues has been e-governance. Obviously, because during COVID-19, there was limited movement, limited human interaction, and there was a need to operate online for the larger part of the time. That is when we started seeing e-governance really taking root within the region. And governments introducing all these systems to enable people to access various services online. So I think e-governance has started taking root and taking shape within the region as a government initiative only through COVID-19 and the limitations that it posed. But also, we have also seen it taking shape, particularly with the introduction of digital ID systems as well. So, with national births and death registration, we have started seeing also this introduction of AI within those systems as well, which was something that was not there. And then I think also even in terms of biometric voter registration, we have seen many of our countries that have had elections recently really embracing AI and utilizing it not only for voter registration, but also even for voting purposes as well. So we are seeing really AI taking its place politically, socially, economically within the region. And one of the key developments also has been this conversation about smart cities. There's been talk about cameras, facial recognition technology, number plate recognition systems. That's all part of AI being embraced and being introduced within even our transport systems, our public systems. And then also from a legal perspective, there've been broad conversations about developing AI policies and strategies. Just recently in Zimbabwe, I know that the new minister, the recently appointed minister of ICTs, did say that the Zimbabwean government has started thinking about an AI policy and an AI strategy, which is great. And even at AU level, at African Union level, I know that like quite recently, like May recent, there was a consultative process that was happening for the development of a continental strategy on AI. And one of the local actors, the Media Institute of Southern Africa, has also been pushing the African Union to adopt this policy document that was developed on AI policy and strategy. So we are seeing that now our governments are really responding to AI and trying to inject it in the various systems, through all these different aspects around transport, around digital IDs, around voter registration and voting processes, but also around like legal policies and strategies. And I think even this buzz around data protection laws and cybercrime laws is also been informed by realization that technology and particularly AI is also taking root and shaping our different aspects of our society. So as a result, governments are also trying to catch up and respond to that, but also utilize that as well.
I love the fact that you've given us an extensive list that gives us a sense of the utility of AI for governments. And also, I think later, as we go on in the conversation, we're going to talk a lot about the fact that even though it comes with all of these benefits, it can also be used in ways that are not good for people. But I wanted to just follow up and just reflect on the fact that it seems that the governments often adopt AI rather than drive its development. What has been the balance between adoption and generation of AI tools look like in Southern Africa, and which players in the region are potentially leading in AI innovation, and what can be used as a reference for other governments?
Yeah, that's quite interesting actually. And that's true that unfortunately, our governments, but also I think even other various stakeholders, we are playing catch up and we're not at the forefront. And I believe that this is as a result of various aspects. And one of them could be an issue of policy. Like when we look at our policies that govern like general internet governance or ICT policies, you'd find that some of them are couched in a way that is trying to regulate and control technology and not necessarily promote innovation. So as a region, I think we need to do better in terms of promoting innovation instead of stifling innovation through overregulation, which has been the approach that most of our governments have been taking. So as far as technology is concerned, you'd find that governments have been emphasizing this issue around abuse of technology, social media abuse, technology being used to, cause public disorder and stuff like that, instead of really acknowledging the importance of technology and how we can really utilize it and benefit from it. So as a result, government approaches have been informed by a need to control and overregulate technology instead of promote its innovation and utilization in the region. So I think that's where we are as a region, that our governments are approaching technology from a perspective of wanting to control it instead of promoting its innovation. But again, we do see that, there's still attempts, particularly by local actors, to try and push for more innovation. And if I am to look, and I apologize for that, I have a bias obviously because I'm Zimbabwean based. When you look at the recent Zimbabwean election, you will see that there was an increased notch in terms of utilizing technology throughout the voter process. There was this talk of Mandla, this, which was supposed to be, I think, an AI bot or something of that sort, which was also being used to influence, the process. Was supposed to be used for voter tabulation, parallel voter tabulation, and stuff like that. So we are seeing also these innovative approaches being undertaken by different stakeholders, despite that the current policy environment is also not promoting innovation. But we are seeing this attempt by different actors to really utilize technology. But at the same time, I think if I were to look at countries particularly, I would step beyond Southern Africa. Unfortunately, Rwanda has really been leading conversations and developments around AI development and AI utilization. So I would really look to Rwanda. And I think the limitations when we think about it from Southern Africa is also that, one, we don't have the data. Most of our data is based in the global north. Like most of the data that we use, the tools that we are using are based in the global north. So as a result, innovation is really being stifled as well, because, we don't really have access to all this data that is necessary to train and develop AI tools. You'd find that, I know within the African Union, there've been conversations about data sharing, and creating these data centers. I know individually countries have been creating their data centers, but also they've been attempted at regional level to create a regional data center which allows information sharing and stuff like that to enable us to also develop our own technology. So I think at the moment it's a double issue of, one is the global south not having the necessary data and the necessary tools. Most of our servers are even based in the global north. So those are some of the limitations, but at the same time, also our policy and government approaches to technology have also been limiting. So we need to get to a point where we create a conducive environment for innovation so that we can also jump onto the bandwagon and be able to develop our own tools that are suitable for us in our context, not only as individual countries, but also as sub-regions and also as Africans.
Thank you so much. I'm very curious about, the flip side. To what extent AI is being integrated into already problematic systems of states and political parties. So if you're looking at the Southern Africa and maybe drawing from some of the other non-Southern African countries, in what ways is AI being used to date to enable repression and violations of human rights?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues really is unlawful and unjustified surveillance, particularly targeting human rights defenders, journalists, and opposition leaders. And we have seen that even with the conversations around smart cities, you find that there are no sufficient safeguards to ensure that there is no unlawful surveillance. The right to privacy has been one right that has been compromised through, this adoption, even of digital ID systems, even biometric voter registration. There have been concerns about lack of oversight mechanisms to ensure that all this data that is being collected and all these systems, including facial recognition technology, all these systems are not utilized for unlawful surveillance, particularly of opposition and human rights defenders and activists and journalists, because that's what we have seen, these tools being used actually to facilitate unlawful surveillance. And then another issue also is the use of bots and trolls that have been used also to target the same groups and anyone else with dissenting views and opinions. So AI algorithms, they're also being used to perpetrate online harassment, threats, and censorship, particularly towards people that have dissenting views and opinions. So that's also another flip side of, AI tools. And then also, even when you think about like coordinated disinformation campaigns as well, bots are being used to spearhead coordinated and targeted disinformation campaigns against journalists to undermine their credibility, to discredit their work. And actually, as part of our work at RPI, this is one of the projects that we are doing, helping media outlets and investigative outlets to undertake investigations and unearth the patterns and sources of disinformation targeted against journalists in their countries. Because that's also what we have seen as well, as some of the flip side of, AI being utilized for repression, but also like quite a recent example. I know that there were SABC journalists who were implicated in deepfake videos, so we are seeing also AI being used actually to perpetrate, attacks on press freedom, to perpetrate attacks on human rights defenders and activists, but also to facilitate unlawful surveillance of all these people as well, sometimes through, existing tools, through the interception laws, but also even through all these systems that we are setting up around smart cities, around digital ID systems as well.
Gender is always a conversation when we talk about the civic and political experiences of citizens. So my question really is around what ways AI has affected that gender dynamic in Southern Africa in terms of like politics, human rights, and the experience of women in public leadership and opportunities.
That's interesting. I think it's been also like, I think equally a double-edged sword, if I would say, being that I think on one end, we see a situation where, for example, women in political leadership or any other leadership position are able to utilize AI to reach wider audiences. I think, with the way we've been seeing digital campaigns taking root, we have seen, women leaders, women in politics embracing technology and AI included, for their political campaigns, helping them to reach wider audiences. That has been like one good aspect to take from the adoption of AI. But on the flip side, again, AI has also been equally used to target them, disinformation and hate speech against women politicians. AI has also been designed, developed, and implemented in ways that have also amplified gender biases. The way some of the algorithms have been perpetuating gender biases, including in political processes. And again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier around data, that we have limited data here. Most of the data is being developed in the global north and stuff like that. All those limitations also perpetrate the existing biases. So as a result, we can also see underrepresentation of women in political positions, in leadership positions, but also general attacks against them on the online space also as a result of AI. So even when you've been talking about gender-based violence, we see also online gender-based violence taking root and being perpetrated through the use of AI technologies as well. So it's been, I think, a double-edged sword in that where, we can utilize the benefits of AI, women in leadership have also benefited from it, but also the existing biases have also been amplified.
What's very interesting is there's this recurring question, especially on Twitter, where you see a video or you see a photo and it's reporting an update on what's happening in a different country. And there's always those comments with people asking, is this real? And I remember someone made a comment to say that we've got into a level where the proximity of a fake video to an authentic one is so small that, for most people, they never really know that it's fake. So how are media organizations dealing with this, challenge of distinguishing truth from AI-generated content, especially in a time where citizen journalists or everyday people are the ones on the ground when incidents occur and are normally the people that kind of bring stuff as it happens into the online space? So how are media organizations navigating that?
Yeah, so I mean that's quite an interesting question actually, because I think nowadays you cannot write anything like without people really looking into it. Even academically, there's always this question about whether this is authentic work or not authentic work. Actually, last year we had a whole range. I think I attended over 5 conferences that were all focused on AI and the media, because it's a really key conversation that's been happening. People have been talking about copyright law, even, for example, copyright law. People have been thinking about how AI and ethics, AI and media ethics, for example. And I think what we have really agreed on, particularly from a media perspective, is that the standard principles of professional and ethical journalism still apply. So, one of the key things has been that whenever there's even breaking news, for example, as the media, you need to investigate and ensure that you verify the authenticity of the information before you run with it. I know there's always this pressure, especially with citizen journalism, as you say, there's this pressure to want to break the news. There's this pressure, to be on top of a situation and stuff like that. But I think what we have really seen is that the standard principles of professional and ethical journalism are still applicable. And that has been the core also to the rest of the media fraternity, to say you need to ensure that you verify information, you undertake your journalistic research, you undertake your normal investigation and gathering of information before you run with a certain issue. And also there's been so many interventions, trainings that are being done, capacity building interventions being done to help journalists also to analyze videos, because especially with content, there's always deepfake videos, deepfake pictures. So I think there've also been attempts, particularly by media support organizations, to help the media to be able to verify the authenticity of information, to analyze videos and pictures and ensure that they're not deep fakes. And it's also part of the broader work around misinformation and disinformation, just ensuring that as part of these verification processes, we also use the various tools, and AI tools are also being used actually to also flag fabricated content. So it's actually funny how it's a double-edged sword, where I think the media is using AI to check for fabricated content, which some of the content is also being fabricated using AI as well.
That's very, very interesting. And I know we've spoken extensively about, governments and the media as well. But when you're looking at how organizations that advance human rights, democracy, and governance are integrating or engaging with AI in their daily operations, what has that looked like?
I think one of the key issues for me that I would highlight is that I think we have seen actually a good utilization of AI within the civil society space. And I think one of the key aspects I would highlight is definitely that issue around research and data analysis and also investigations. So as I mentioned, as part of the work that we're doing currently at IPI, we've been looking at disinformation, online threats toward the media. And quite recently, like a few weeks ago, we had a conversation about strengthening peer-to-peer networks among actors that are countering disinformation and online threats. And we had Code for Africa, for example, joining us to talk about their work. And you will see that like Code for Africa has a whole range of teams that include a team that trains on data analysis and stuff like that, but also a team that does research looking at like information manipulation. They are using natural language processing and machine learning to do their work, including like the impact on the democracy landscape. They've been using AI to look at information manipulation, using it to investigate organized crime and big businesses. They've been using it, as part of their broader PESA check, which is like a fact-checking initiative. So we are seeing really AI being utilized as part of the broader work to promote transparency and accountability. We are seeing it being used as part of the broader work to facilitate investigations, to see trends, even in terms of like budget tracking, looking at government budgets, tracking government budgets. AI is being used also on that front. If we bring it closer to home in Zimbabwe, I know there's Justice Code Foundation that developed an application which helps you to answer questions around, legal questions around various issues, including the Constitution. You can access the Constitution in various languages, but also you can get answers, for example, what to do when you're arrested and stuff like that, even mapping for you like lawyers that are in your vicinity and stuff like that. So we are seeing really AI being utilized also in the broader democratic landscape, civil society using it as part of its broader work to promote democracy, to promote transparency and accountability, but also to promote fundamental rights. And for me, as someone who has a passion around access to information, we've had conversations about how AI can also be used to bridge the divide in terms of access to information. So, for example, when we look at people with disabilities, how AI is being used, to help people with maybe visual impairments, for example. So AI is also being utilized by various, I know I've worked with Signs of Hope, for example. They're using AI in their various spaces to bridge the divide around basic fundamental rights. And then from a media perspective as well, I know there are lots of media houses that have been introducing AI news presenters, so in terms of that broader framework of exercise of fundamental rights, access to information, media freedom, AI is also being used. The media using AI, for example, for translation. A news anchor presenting in English and using AI for their presentation to be translated to Mandarin, for example, or any other language, helping them also to bridge the language divide. So we are seeing in the broader framework AI being utilized by all these different actors in the civic society space to really facilitate their work in terms of promoting human rights, but also promoting democracy, looking into trends and patterns by governments to be able to inform their work. Actually, early this year, I was part of a project that was being done by Willy Trust, which was looking at technology from a feminist tech lens and its impact on democracy. And their fellows went to Nigeria, where they were also learning from Nigerian organizations on how they've been using AI to track government spending, track government budgets, to do parallel vote tabulation and stuff like that. So we are seeing really AI taking shape and enabling civil society to undertake its work, particularly around human rights and promoting democracy as well.
Today has been a great lesson. I think you've really broken it down, and I think our audience will definitely appreciate this. It gives them enough to get a good sense of what the landscape is like, but also it challenges them to go back and search, because there's just so much more. My question is, what more should be done, and by which stakeholders, to ensure more awareness and encourage more people to acquire the skills to navigate this AI landscape?
Thank you so much. I mean, really, I find that to be quite interesting. Like what more needs to, because I think that's a very important aspect to think about. One of the key things for me would be capacity building. One around ensuring that we ensure that we promote innovation. We have so many innovative hubs in our countries in Southern Africa. Let us ensure that we facilitate capacity building to enable, our local talented young people to be able to develop AI tools, to be able to maximize the benefits of AI. But also we need to ensure that we develop policy frameworks that facilitate innovation, but also provide ethical guidelines for the use of AI, because that has always been a thing as well, that we talk about these biases, we talk about, all these issues around human rights, right to privacy implications. The only way we can address those is also by ensuring that we develop policy guidelines that include that human rights principles, that include democratic principles. So developing frameworks as a region, as individual countries, developing frameworks for ethical use of AI, frameworks for upholding human rights in AI development, in AI deployment, but also I think collaboration. Normally when it comes to technology, you find that governments tie this conversation strongly also to national security. But I think there's a lot of talent and there's a lot of expertise to be tapped in from civil society, from the private sector. So we need to promote more collaboration between civil society, government, and the private sector, so that we can really realize the full benefits of AI, and also ensure that we adopt AI, but also without undermining fundamental rights while doing so. So I think those would be like my key important next steps. Developing policy frameworks, collaboration, capacity building. I think that would be like a good way to start this conversation and improvements, and creating the necessary conducive environment for utilization of AI.
Thank you so, so much. I've exhausted all the questions I had for you today. Is there anything you want to add to the conversation that we've not yet covered?
No, I think we've covered it all. Just to say, this is a really important conversation. And I think it's really important that we don't play catch up as a region, particularly as a global south. We need to ensure that we're really on top of the situation. And I think that also includes leveraging our voices even at global processes. There have been so many conversations happening at global levels around AI, around cybersecurity and cybercrime, data protection and privacy. And I feel that our voices as Africans is not being heard enough. So it's important that all stakeholders, we have all hands on deck uh, in the various sectors that we are, civil society, technologists, the media, to ensure that our voices are heard. Otherwise, we'll continue in a situation where all these tools are being developed with the context of the global north, and they're not contextualized and they're not benefiting us in the global south. So it's important to contribute to these global processes and conversations and ensure that all these tools are developed and contextualized for our benefit as well.
Thank you, Nompilo, for your time and insights. This has been like a great conversation. Like I said, you really broke it down for a lot of people that are listening to it. And a special thank you to our listeners. Would love to hear your feedback and thoughts on today's episode. Leave us a comment on the platform you're using to listen to this episode, or take us on a post on social media. Remember to share this podcast and follow Southern Defenders on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. You can visit our website, www.southerndefenders.africa, to get a broader sense of the work of Southern Defenders. This is the Civic Space Today, a program of the Southern Defenders. I am Mantate Mlotshwa, your host for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next time. Together, we defend.